I always knew my neighbor Karen had a unique relationship with reality, but I didn't realize she'd built an entire fantasy kingdom in her backyard, one where my fence apparently trespassed on her royal domain. The first time she accused me, I laughed it off. The second time, I realized she wasn't joking. And by the third time, that's when the real chaos began. It all started on a sunny Saturday morning. I was enjoying my coffee on the porch, the backyard quiet and peaceful, when I heard the unmistakable snap of a tape measure. There she was, Karen, sunglasses perched on her nose, clipboard in hand, and a glare that could command armies. "Do you realize this fence is 2 feet on my property?" she shouted like she owned the cul-de-sac. I blinked, wondering if I'd stepped into a live sitcom. "Karen," I said calmly, "this fence has been here since before either of us moved in." "That's what you think," she replied. "I checked the records." For anyone familiar with Karen, "I checked the records" means she briefly zoomed in on Google Maps and decided she was a licensed surveyor. She marched off, muttering threats about legal action, property encroachment, and probably unpaid taxes, while I shook my head. The next morning, bright orange flags were stabbed into my yard, like tiny cries for help from a deranged adventurer. Karen had filed a formal HOA complaint claiming my fence invaded common property. The HOA board, helmed by Karen's best friend Marlene, another self-appointed queen, sent a notice demanding I move the fence within 7 days. "What structure?" I asked when I called. "It's a fence, sir. Community standards must be upheld," Marlene said in that syrupy tone designed to spike blood pressure. "And the evidence?" A crooked cell phone photo and a screenshot from Google Earth. I nearly fell over laughing. Moving a fence isn't cheap, and I wasn't about to demolish 15 years of landscaping because Karen fancied herself a land baron. So I did the rational thing. I hired a real land surveyor. When I told Karen, she smirked like she'd already won. "Good idea," she said. "When it proves I'm right, you'll have no excuse." The surveyor, a calm middle-aged man named Jim, arrived a few days later with his gear. Karen ran out instantly, binder in hand, grinning like she was about to settle a century-old property feud. Jim nodded politely and set up his tripod, while I tried not to laugh at her enthusiasm. For an hour, Jim measured, marked, and double-checked every inch of the property line, while Karen hovered like a supervisor in a factory of nonsense. At one point, she leaned toward me and whispered, "When he confirms it's on my land, you'll move it immediately. No hard feelings." I smiled. None taken. Then came the hammer. Jim looked first at me, then at Karen, and calmly said, "According to county records and precise measurements, the fence is 2 feet inside your property. It's actually further from the line than necessary." Karen blinked. "Impossible." "Nope," Jim said. "Correctly placed. The real issue? Your shed." She turned pale. "Her shed?" Jim pointed across the yard. 18 inches onto his property. Minor, but technically encroaching. Her kingdom built on borrowed soil. She muttered about old measurements and construction errors, then stormed inside, leaving Jim packing up, trying not to laugh. "You get this a lot?" I asked. "More than you'd think. Some people just can't handle the truth," he said. The next morning, Karen's flags were gone. Her smug attitude vanished, temporarily. But Karen had a new plan, and this time, it would drag the entire HOA into her chaos. A few days later, an envelope stamped with the HOA logo appeared on my door, like a threat disguised as bureaucracy. Inside, a letter from Marlene read, "Due to recent boundary concerns, the board has decided to review all property lines in the community. Homeowners must provide proof of boundary accuracy within 10 business days." Not about fairness. About me. I walked over to the HOA office, a glorified shed behind a clubhouse smelling like printer ink and despair. Marlene sat there, pretending to sort papers. "So you're auditing the whole neighborhood because Karen doesn't like my fence?" I asked. "This is about fairness, Mr. Benson. Everyone must follow the same rules," she said, practicing that HOA smile that could cut steel. "Rules? Or Karen's feelings?" I countered. Her smile twitched. I knew I'd won. My neighbors were furious, not at me, but at Karen. Suddenly, Karen's little crusade wasn't just annoying, it was about to cost the entire community. By midweek, the neighborhood Facebook page had erupted. One post read, "If Karen wants to move fences, she can move mine herself." Another said, "This is why no one invites her to block parties." But Karen didn't stop. Oh no, she appeared at my door again, clipboard in hand, wearing a reflective vest like she was leading a construction crew. "I just wanted to give you a chance to correct the record," she said. "Correct what record?" I raised an eyebrow. She handed me a printed map, a hand-drawn disaster that looked like it had been sketched by someone half asleep. "This is the original plat map," she said proudly. "Clearly shows the property line." I stared at it. North was pointing sideways. My fence was drawn in crayon. I said, "Karen, this looks like something a kid made for art class." "It's from the city archives," she snapped. So I pulled out my phone, opened the official county map, and placed it next to hers. Then I asked, "Care to explain why yours has your name written in bubble letters?" She snatched it back, muttering about confidential records, and stormed off like a general retreating from battle. But things escalated from ridiculous to shocking. At the next HOA meeting, attended only because a neighbor bribed me with cookies, Karen stood in front of the crowd, waving a folder like she'd uncovered a government conspiracy. "This community has been living under false assumptions," she announced. "All boundary markers were misplaced during development. I have proof." Marlene nodded dramatically, clearly in on whatever scheme Karen had cooked up. Someone in the back yelled, "Proof? Or another coloring project?" Laughter erupted, but Karen was unfazed. She slammed down a map stamped with official-looking seals. For a split second, I wondered if she'd actually found something. Then a retired city engineer in the crowd squinted and said, "Karen, those stamps are from the Parks Department, not land management. And that font? Comic Sans." Silence fell. Then laughter rolled through the room like thunder. Karen grabbed her papers and stormed out, red-faced, muttering about corruption and fake maps. It should have ended there. But it didn't. 2 days later, I got an email from the county assessor. Apparently, Karen had tried to file an official boundary correction for the entire street under her own name. The clerk called me personally. Sir, did you authorize a woman named Karen Miller to modify your property record?" "Absolutely not," I said, choking on my coffee. "Yeah, we thought so." The clerk sighed. She submitted her own survey sketch in crayon. Even the county was laughing. For me, though, this was war. Karen had crossed the line from annoying neighbor to delusional bureaucrat. I decided it was time to end this once and for all. I wasn't just going to prove her wrong. I was going to expose her decade-long string of lies. A week later, a strange truck appeared outside her house. Logo, Precision Property Consultants. My stomach sank. She'd hired her own surveyors, or so she thought. The workers looked confused the moment they arrived. Karen paced, ruler and megaphone in hand, shouting, "Measure from the lilac bush. That's the real marker." One of the men glanced at me across the fence with a universal, "Please help me" expression. I strolled over casually. "Everything okay here?" He whispered, "She wants us to prove her yard is 4 feet bigger than it actually is." I laughed so hard, I almost dropped my phone. Turns out consultants weren't licensed surveyors. They were landscapers she found on Craigslist, thinking they'd be planting trees. By evening, her yard looked like a geometry disaster. Random flags, crooked stakes, and a string line that bisected her mailbox. Meanwhile, I was digging legally. At the county office, I pulled up the subdivision's original plat. And what did I find? Karen's property line had been corrected over a decade ago after a developer's measurement error. Guess who signed off? Karen herself. She knew all along. She wasn't mistaken. She was lying. I made copies. Okay, more than a few, enough to fill a binder thicker than her HOA rulebook, and brought them to the next HOA meeting. Normally, HOA meetings are slower than drying paint, but that night, every seat was filled. Half the neighborhood had brought popcorn. Karen strutted in late, sunglasses indoors, clipboard like a weapon. Before she could speak, I stood up. Before we start, I'd like to present some documents regarding property boundaries. Marlene tried to stop me. That's not on the agenda. Oh, I think it will be. I interrupted, slamming open the binder. These are county-verified plats showing Karen Miller's property line has been corrected and approved by her signature, dated June 14th, 2013. The room went silent. Karen froze, lips twitching. I continued. For the past 10 years, she's accused neighbors of encroachment, while knowing full well she signed correction herself. Voices erupted. Wait! She did this to me, too. And me! She made me move my shed. The room turned into a courtroom drama. People waved HOA fines, yelling about Karen's false claims. Marlene tried to restore order. It was like stopping a hurricane with a hairdryer. Karen's face turned beet red. Those documents are forged, she screamed. I slid one across. Funny, you see, the county clerk confirmed them this morning. She snatched it, and I swear I saw the exact moment she realized her signature was right there in black ink. Marlene whispered something. Karen pointed at me. You think this proves anything? I am the HOA. The crowd laughed. One man yelled, Not anymore. You're not. The board held an emergency vote. Within 5 minutes, Karen was officially removed as property compliance chair. Glorious. She stormed out like a soap opera villain, muttering about starting her own association. But the comedy wasn't done. 2 weeks later, a city inspector showed up, tipped off about her shed encroaching 18 inches onto my property. He measured, nodded, and slapped a bright orange notice on the door. Structure must be relocated. Karen argued, claiming I'd somehow moved the earth. The inspector smiled. Ma'am, the planet doesn't rotate that fast. A few days later, I watched as she hired movers to drag her shed 2 feet over. Every hammer slam sounded like justice. Neighbors threw a small party. Cupcakes had paper fences on them. The new HOA board personally apologized for all the nonsense. As for Karen, she barely speaks to anyone. Flag's gone. Clipboard retired. Rumor has it she joined another HOA in a different county. God help them. I sit on my porch, look at my perfectly legal fence, and smile. It took a land surveyor, county records, patience, and a little karma to defeat a tyrant. The neighborhood is finally peaceful. If you enjoyed this story, hit that subscribe button. Every subscription helps me bring more outrageous HOA tales. And tap the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Next story? Justice gets even sweeter.